Today's presentation is the fourth in a series of risk management web conferences brought to you by Crane and Rigging Hotline and Houston International Insurance Group. My name is Mike Larson, editor of MCM Group, which publishes Crane and Rigging Hotline, and your host for today's conference. Risk management affects all areas of your business and requires planning ahead to ensure that your business is covered from every angle. With this series, Crane and Rigging Hotline and HIIG have developed a range of topics that help you prepare for foreseen risks, estimate their impact, and define responses. Additionally, this webinar series will help you establish a risk strategy that includes avoiding, controlling and mitigating, accepting, and transferring risk. Today's topic will be effective fleet risk control in the construction industry. Many studies and countless statistics illustrate the need for effective fleet risk control. And there are even more driver safety programs touted in the industry by experts in today's market. However, fleet accident statistics remain staggeringly high. Kevin Cunningham, president of HIIG Construction, will look at how your company can get beyond the hype and establish an effective risk control culture in your organization. Kevin has 30 years of experience in heavy industrial insurance and risk management. He formerly worked as a Lloyd's of London cover holder underwriter and as a Crane Insurance program manager on behalf of Lexington Insurance, Travelers Insurance, and National Interstate Insurance companies. Today he is president of HIIG Construction, a division of Houston International Insurance Group, where he is responsible for all business development and overall risk management services for the crane, pile driving, foundation, and related heavy civil construction segments. If you have questions about the presentation or general insurance questions, Kevin's contact information is at the bottom of this page, and it will be available again at the end of the presentation. About our sponsor, Houston International Insurance Group, or HIIG, is an international insurance carrier that operates 4 wholly owned major insurance companies underwriting in more than 30 countries worldwide. For more information, visit HIIG's website at www.hiig.com or contact Kevin, who can specifically help you with heavy industrial insurance and risk management. Before we start the presentation, thank you again for attending. If you have questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat box on your screen. We will do a Q&A at the end. This presentation is being recorded. It can be accessed on the Maximum Capacity Media YouTube channel at youtube.com/maxcapmedia.com or at Crane and Rigging Hotline's website, www.cranehotline.com. Now, I'll pass the controls to Kevin. Kevin, please begin whenever you're ready.
Okay, Mike, thank you very much. We're having some technical issues trying to get the slides up. Is it right on your screen, Mike? There we go.
Yes, there you go.
Okay. All right, thank you all for attending. We'll get right into this. As Mike mentioned, we're going to talk today about effective fleet risk control in the construction industry, and this is a follow-up to a 2-part series article in Crane and Rigging Hotline. Today we're going to discuss these items on your board. Fleet accident statistics, how you can assess your own fleet risk controls, 5 basic elements to help you achieve effective fleet risk control in your company, looking at some other ideas on how to re-engineer your own fleet risk control approach, and then a big element about getting beyond the hype to achieve continual driver safety improvement, which is what this workshop is all about. Then we'll go through 10 critical elements to establish a continual risk improvement process. And then we've got some illustrations on direct cost and indirect costs. And then an example cost of motor vehicle crashes worksheet. We'll end with a brief summary, and then there's a brief bibliography of some of the sources from today's information. At the end of this session, Maximum Capacity Media will be forwarding to all of you a safety standards for the operation of company vehicles. It's a tools of the trade. It's a safety document that you can populate your company logo and company name throughout, and we're hoping that that can be of value for you. All right, let's jump right into this. According to the National Safety Council estimates in 2012, the #1 cause of occupational fatalities in the U.S. is from motor vehicle crashes. 36,200 deaths occurred on the road involving business vehicles in that year. And according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, fleet accidents cost American businesses over $276 billion annually. And U.S. insurers pay out a staggering $548 million per day from fleet-related fatalities. And another staggering statistic, every 12 minutes someone dies in a motor vehicle crash in the U.S. today. So before we move on to the next slide, let's just rehash a couple of numbers. 36,200 deaths, $276 billion of annual cost to business, and $548 million per day cost to insurers that clearly get passed down to you businesses and business owners. These statistics are really nothing short of staggeringly out of control. So, before we get into this slide, one last comment on the statistics, that this problem is with fleet crashes is so pervasive that the National Safety Council has aligned with the World Health Organization to form a global decade of action for road safety across the world. They project 1.9 million deaths by 2020 as a result of motor vehicle crashes. So, considering the magnitude of the problem, what can anyone do to change the exposure to your company? We feel any crane or construction company should start by asking yourself these 4 basic questions. Is your company fleet safety program truly activity-driven with a focus on continual improvement? Or, here's where the rubber meets the road, is it a 3-ring binder type safety program with occasional mandatory fleet safety talks to stay in compliance with regulators? Second question, does your company fleet risk control program actively engage, emphasis on actively engaging your drivers to focus on their attitudes and behaviors? Realizing these are somewhat touchy-feely elements, not typical in construction and crane organizations, but attitude and behavior will drive results, will drive activity in the field, so it connects to number 3. Does your company fleet risk control program include consistent recognition of driver safety and safety-conscious results? Number 4, does your company fleet risk control program include poor driving or violation disciplinary action? 4 fundamental questions. We've seen organizations around the country have to dig in deep, get beyond the hype and all of the new electronic programs and new documentation, and really dig in with the point being that if you can make an honest assessment of each of these issues in your companies, with the key considerations being activity-based programs, non-canned systems, which everyone is forced to use, everyone has to find new tools, but to try to avoid the canned approach, because certainly drivers, and in particular construction and crane business drivers and employees, will see right through the canned systems of some of the pre-programmed toolbox talks and compliance-driven safety requirements, and really look into interactive communication with drivers and consistency in these communications weekly, monthly, quarterly, with a focus on results and recognition. Okay, so this slide will provide 5 basic elements to achieve effective fleet risk control in your organization, and you'll note these to be very obvious and, quite frankly, oversimplified. Only hire capable drivers. Only allow eligible drivers to drive on company business. Continually communicate with your drivers about safe driving practices. Continually monitor driver behavior and results. And the simplest of all, stay current with proper vehicle maintenance. It doesn't have to be, from our perspective, from what we've seen, it doesn't have to be any more complicated than this. But how do you get there? Well, here are some suggestions for re-engineering your approach in your company. Since motor vehicle crashes are the leading cause of injury and death for all ages, and that they have far-reaching financial and psychological effects on your employees, coworkers, and families, we feel the optimal approach for re-engineering should target your drivers' behaviors and attitudes, with continued scheduled communication from supervisors and owners in a constant attempt to create a drive-safe culture. Certainly job site safety, all the new OSHA regs, the new B30 standards, all those focus on similar principles. Driver safety has a lot more simple exposure, and the continual emphasis on communication, behavior, and accountability can drive improved results. The constant instruction on basic safe driving, because it isn't more complicated than that, basic safe driving practices, and then consistently recognizing safe driving practices can create an environment for accountability in your organization. And keeping it simple, because it is not rocket science, with a couple of considerations. Focusing, again, driver behavior through consistent communication, one element. Creating an environment for accountability, getting beyond the hype, through consistent recognition. Small items, dinner gift cards, annual top driver awards, basic facts, basic simple approach, and very importantly, establishing a defined disciplinary procedure for violations and sticking to it. All right, so taking a look at this next slide, what else can be done to truly establish a drive-safe culture in your organization? We found successful organizations have gotten beyond the hype, gotten past online-type gadgetry, and focusing on the fundamentals. So company activity, and don't mean to keep rehashing the same old thing, but activity, not just paper, to continually change and improve drivers' attitudes and behaviors. Changing attitudes through continual communication will force accountability to achieve better results, and continual risk control improvement activity by company supervisors will give them the opportunity to identify where corrective action is required. One critical element is company owners must buy in or behavior won't change. So it's sometimes a tough challenge for supervisors who may be on this call to approach the company owners who very likely, all companies have fleet safety programs along with their other company safety programs. But when we look back at those staggering statistics, clearly not a lot of companies are making any headway. And when we look forward at some of the cost drivers and cost illustrations, this data may help you approach your company owners to take a hard look at making some changes. So let's look at, before we move on, at a few socially acceptable challenges that also may be overcome. What we've seen is bad driving habits are basically illegal, but if we really are honest with ourselves, socially acceptable. Who hasn't run a stoplight? Who hasn't cruised through a right on red? Who hasn't done those certain things? We all do it. Occasional speeding, another item, to meet various project deadlines. You know, it's normally okay. Improper lane changing with company trucks. You know, you got big trucks, you're in a hurry, you're going from job to job. It's just part of normal business. Sometimes not wearing seatbelts. Sometimes okay when drivers are jumping in and out of trucks or on a job site. Here's a big one. Cell phone usage is part of daily business. Random vehicle maintenance or lax inspections is sometimes common. So these are just a handful of other things, and a couple of other key ones are ill-defined drug and alcohol policies when the minor claims occur, fender benders. Sometimes it's easier to look the other way, and companies let those things go. If we go back to some of the basic fundamentals we're talking about, to continually change attitudes and behavior through constant communication and activity, these are the kinds of things that need to be focused on in order to have any real impact. And I think the biggest one, the lack of driver disciplinary action, especially today when considering the tough labor market, it's got to be done, or you're going to end up on the wrong end of the stick. So one last item of determining driver qualification. Sometimes that's neglected in construction, where it's pretty common sense. Everyone should be able to drive a truck. And so dealing with those who are going to drive more sophisticated equipment is very important. All right, let's get into some of the meat of it. So here's our recommendation. If you can assess your current company practices with an open mind towards an honest comparison to these guidelines, and compare them to your company activity, truly compare it to what you're actually doing, not only what's on paper, it should achieve effective fleet risk control, or at least get the ball rolling for you to achieve effective fleet risk control in your company. Let's start with number one, senior management commitment and employee involvement. Very basic, straightforward. Everyone says it, everyone does it. That's great. But the safety of an organization's employees as they drive for work, and to and from work, is so important that it requires the attention of top-level management on a regular basis, not just in a book. Senior management certainly is vital to providing the leadership and to set these policies, and as importantly to allocate resources, both staff and budget, to begin to establish a drive-safe culture. Written policies and procedures, number two, pretty basic stuff. Everyone has it. But a written statement emphasizing the commitment to specifically reducing traffic-related deaths and injuries is essential to any successful program. Creating a clear, comprehensive, and enforceable set of traffic safety policies and communicating them regularly to all employees that drive. And very importantly, your sample policies should mandatorily include alcohol and drug use, along with mandatory seatbelt use in whatever written policies and procedures you have in place. Number 3, establishing driver agreements. We see a lot of companies haven't gone that far, but establishing truly a contract with all employees who drive for work purposes, whether they drive assigned company vehicles or their own personal vehicles, is a step towards achieving awareness to try to drive the accountability to constant safe driving behaviors. Motor vehicle record checks. Everyone does it. All of us on the insurance company side does it. It's an imperfect system, so regularity and consistency is the key, and having the discipline to check the driving record of all employees annually who drive for work purposes, with the discipline to screen out drivers who have poor driving records, since they are most likely to cause a problem in the future. Crash reporting and investigation. Establishing a clearly defined and enforceable crash reporting and investigation process for all crashes, regardless of severity, should be keen for every employer and for a supervisor as soon as possible after an incident. The incidents drive serious results. In the insurance business, frequency breeds severity. So if there are little fender benders or little speeding tickets, those end up, if there's any analogy to insurer results, the frequency, a contractor that has a frequency of small accidents typically ends up having a major accident, and we feel that same analogy applies to minor crash reporting and investigation. Vehicle selection, maintenance, and inspection. Clearly defined in your safety program, pretty obvious. Selecting, properly maintaining, and routinely inspecting company vehicles is critically important to preventing crashes and related injuries and losses to your people and your company. I think number 7, step 7, disciplinary action system is probably the most important, because word spreads. Developing a strategy to determine the course of action after an occurrence of a moving violation and or after a preventable crash is critical. It's critical to have the current topics to discuss and for your employees to see that you mean business. Obvious one here, driver training and communication. All the experts say the same thing. Everyone does it, but if you can provide a continuous, pre-scheduled, disciplined follow-through on driver safety training and communication, even the experienced drivers will benefit from the periodic training and reminders that they're accountable to it, it's your company vehicle, it's your company resources, and the continual communication will reinforce that with some consistency. Regulatory compliance, another logical one. We see many companies have this as a front-end driver. It is our opinion it should be the back end. Certainly you have to adhere to all highway safety regulations, and it's important to clearly establish which, if any, local or state or federal regulations govern your vehicles, but that shouldn't be the driver. The driver is that all workers go home safe the way they came to work, and that you can avoid any of the catastrophe that has showed up in those earlier mentioned statistics. So as we start to wind down and get into some questions and answers, we want to look at some direct accident costs, as compared to indirect accident costs in this illustration. And I've been doing this for 25 years and have seen this iceberg illustration several times over every year. You have all probably seen it as well, but I thought the visual effect may assist in driving home the point that many people believe that, well, you've got insurance, and if there's an accident, I'm covered and life goes on. The point of this illustration is that's not accurate. there are non-insurable costs. And when we look at this illustration, I think the major one is productivity costs. Absenteeism, short-term disability, long-term disability, overtime, turnover, temporary staffing, administrative costs, replacement training. All of these items are below the line. They're not typical. They're not typically insured. They cost your company money. They eat company profits. So beyond the moral aspect that every driver should go home safely the way they came to work, the individual direct accident costs and indirect accident costs, drivers of accident statistics in your company may help you communicate with your company owners to drive the process. All right, let's take a look now. Just spend a few minutes to review this illustration of a very basic crash cost where the driver in this case broke his leg and had minor cuts and abrasions. These are rounded numbers, and there are some numbers that from our end on the insurance company side we wouldn't know, but you would know at your end. But the workers' compensation benefits, this is round numbers and is rough. A lot of that will depend on age and size of payroll and all those kinds of things. But a basic broken leg accident where a driver is going to be off for several weeks can cost the company in workers' comp benefits from a direct cost about $74,000. Related health care costs out of our world, but you would know from your perspective. Increase in medical insurance premiums, another thing individual to each of your companies. But that fourth item down, auto insurance and liability claim settlements. A broken leg with a smashed car and a smashed third party, this is round numbers, typically without a major, certainly a fatality, a catastrophe, but some bodily injury to the other side and damaged vehicles is going to run about $150,000. This is insurable just like the workers' compensation, but as you can imagine, those costs will be passed back to you in some fashion. Here's some of the others. Physical and vocational rehab costs. Again, now this would be a workers' comp related expense, but there are costs through your experience modification and other things that will impact you. Roughly that'll cost us on the insurance side about $15,000. Property damage, assuming the truck damaged or totaled the personal vehicle of the other person's, around $30,000 unless it's a brand new Lamborghini or some high-end vehicle. Your own motor vehicle repair and replacement, typically if it's just a front end and it's not totaled, that's a typical cost. Here's a couple others. Your emergency medical service, this will connect in the workers' comp. Vehicle towing, those kinds of things are maybe covered on your auto, may not, about 5. And sometimes there are municipality or utilities if you broke roads, road signs or poles. So direct costs on this one, $311,000. Seems pretty basic. Broken leg, scratches and scrapes. Not a total truck loss to the contractor, but it was a total vehicle claim on the other side. But direct costs there, $311,000. Now here's where it gets interesting. We go to below the line. If you think about that iceberg illustration, how do you peg the cost of your supervisor's time in rescheduling, making special arrangements, trying to clean up the mess, and then we'll just drop down line by line. Fleet manager's time to coordinate vehicle repair, replacement, reassigning personnel to cover missing employees, which could affect overtime and employee, and if the worker was older and could not come back to work, now you got to find a brand new one. So you got an employee replacement cost. Re-entry, retraining of injured employees if they've got to go into light duty or other capacities in your organization will cost money. Administrative costs, documentation, treatment, absences, the crash investigation, all things that take time and cost money. Here's a big one, failure to meet a customer. Let's say he was carrying a serious load, a very important load. There's timing considerations. The load is shot. You got to go back to the manufacturer. Your customer is angry. What if? What if you lost the customer, or certainly you're going to lose the profit on that job? We pegged $100,000. Bad publicity, loss of business, that's pretty nebulous. We just plug in a number there. But we look at the two combined, the direct total cost and the indirect total costs, and this is a relatively minor, straightforward, non-totaled, insured vehicle, contractor vehicle, $576,000. Those are major. That's major money. The time, the aggravation, besides the moral aspect of the driver, hoping to go home safe the way he came to work, should be enough to to have you relook at your own organization, relook at your own practices, and then do an assessment and see if any of these items can make sense for your organization to attempt to achieve a higher degree of risk control in your fleet safety. Moving along, we'll get to slide number 9. So in summary, we showed that fleet accident statistics are truly staggeringly out of control. Again, I've been doing this for a lot of years, and it never goes down. There doesn't seem to be a solution on a global perspective or on a national perspective from these major institutions. The numbers just keep getting bigger. So what can we do? The idea is each individual company on this presentation can take any nuggets of information from here, and basically, if you can assess your company's risk control activity, main emphasis on the activity, and compare it to the traditional 3-ring binder approach that all companies have, to flush out, are you doing enough? Is there gadgetry and online and all the new facets of how to do the same old thing, or is there a continual focus, a better way to have a continual focus on driver behavior in addition to your fleet maintenance, and to let your employees know that there's going to be a continual focus on their behavior to attempt to drive some of that accountability. So getting beyond the hype and online gadgetry that we continually see coming out in the markets to focus on getting back to the basics, on the fundamental activities that really are driven by continuous communication to your drivers. And compare what you're doing today to those 10 critical elements. We feel you really can establish a continual risk improvement process. And let's try to get beyond those words. Continual risk improvement. Certainly the exposure in your world never changes. Never doesn't stop changing. New jobs, new environments, new weather, new people, new economics, new hires. So the exposures continually change. And if your company hasn't reassessed everything they're doing and doesn't have a true to form, a true life, continual risk improvement process embedded in your fleet safety program, it is my opinion that your company could end up contributing to those staggeringly out of control results. So that does it for our presentation today. Some of the sources here where this information came from. We've got all kinds of studies here. We'll gladly share any of these with you. There's too much information to put on paper, but we'll gladly try to help you. And that does it for today's presentation. Thank you. If there are any questions, I believe you go online and Mike will field them for us. Mike?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, here we go. Thank you, Kevin. Kevin's contact information is on the slide on the screen. Can you see that on the screen yet?
There you go. It's on now.
Okay. Oops. There we go. Okay. And a copy of, or a link to the online recording and a document that you can customize to your own company that Kevin has provided will be sent to you by email after the presentation today. So you'll have access to the recording, you'll have access to Kevin's information, and you'll have access to the customizable document that you can put your own company logos and name in, all set up for you. That will be available. You'll be sent the link after the presentation today. As for questions, first question is, are there any examples you can provide of disciplinary or incentive programs that have been successful?
Yes. Yeah, there's all kinds of examples, and really it'll come from the bibliography sources. We can share some we've seen, but typically they are our insured customers, and we certainly don't want to betray any confidentiality. But yes, if the person asking the question sends the contact information with that request, we'll get you both the some driver safety incentives and disciplinary programs that have been effective.
Okay. Do you have any examples of how much this kind of program can reduce accidents and costs, either in dollars or by percentage?
Examples. Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah. Do you have any examples or of how much a proper reward and an active program can reduce accidents and costs, and either by dollars or by percentage? How effective can it be? Can you expect to see a 50% reduction?
Yes.
Or
yeah. In fact, one of the studies, our company, which is the only accident data I have access to legally today, outside of the open public studies, we're only 2 years old, so our studies, our data isn't there yet. But I can send some major carriers, Liberty Mutual, and some other major employers, General Motors, Nationwide Insurance, Charter Communications. We can send to you some program and results that have some statistics on decreasing preventable crashes and cost savings, and so the guy with the question, or whoever has the question, just needs to communicate with Mike where to send it, and we'll send you those statistics.
Okay. What kinds of driver testing should be conducted, and how often should it be done? Are there any guidelines for that?
Well, driver testing is going to would have to connect with what their job duties are. Certainly in the crane rigging specialized transport business, it's different than heavy construction because they're transporting oversized, overweight, and each state has its own training requirements. I think the message here was that that beyond the very recognized fleet safety training that does go on, that all companies have, creating a weekly communication to all drivers with a monthly follow-up to all drivers and a quarterly results within your own company creating your own statistical data on either hours or miles or loads driven, sticking to the basics is what this model is about. It's beyond the technical driver training, load securement, all those technical fleet, heavy construction, heavy crane, specialized transport. It's beyond those technical requirements, which everyone has to go through and abide by. This is taking those requirements and infusing some of these basic business practices. So again, if the person with a question can send it, I can explain it in writing in a follow-up and provide supporting material to drive that point home.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions that we have now, so I guess this will end today's webinar. And again, the document, you'll be sent a link that will let you download the document that Kevin has prepared, and it's customizable, as well as the recording and the slides from the webinar. Thank you. Kevin, thank you.
Thank you.